It's a fine foggy night tonight, and I doubt if anyone has ever told you of the marvelous fogs we have in Aberdeen.
Oh, God!
Eugene.
Bakersfield.
Los Angeles.
San Francisco.
He wasn't giving me my props in Oaktown.
Portland. Los Angeles.
Los Angeles de California.
San Francisco.
San Francisco?
You gotta find your Irvine.
Irvine?
And Hanford.
Eugene.
Seattle.
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 Sacramento.
Fresno.
We're going to Vancouver.
Modesto, California.
San Diego.
Chino.
You know, there might be an opening for a manager in Visalia next spring.
Yakima, right?
Vallejo, California, the V.
Welcome to the West Coast Sojourn podcast. This is Donnell Alexander, and I'm here with my co-host,
Lev Anderson.
Yeah, and Lev is far away. We may have a little bit of delay. Where are you, Lev? Tell us about your location. What's going on where you are?
I'm just off the strip, kind of, in Las Vegas. We have a family reunion. We're at this Airbnb, and it's been kind of fun. There's I don't know how many of us there are, maybe 15 of us or 13 of us. And we've just been here a couple days. We're in about a half hour, we're driving up to the Hoover Dam to see one of the 8th wonders of the world. Tonight, we're going to go to the Sphere to see the Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
And other than that, just been trying to deal with the madness that is Las Vegas.
What does that mean? I understand Vegas is dying. Is that not true?
You know, it seems a little dead, but I think this is also the downtime because I guess New Year's is really popular. So the week or two before New Year's is kind of dead. So it's a little hard to say, but I don't know. The casinos seem to be doing okay when I walked through them. The crazy thing that I never really noticed, or I think is new, is the number of Walgreens and CVS stores that are on the strip. And they've got all the neon lights, just like the casinos, but there's 4 Walgreens within 4 blocks. It just all seems like this kind of crazy consumer paradise. I mean, I'm sure it's just prophylactic sales that keep those locations in business, but, and just Vegas is just so weird and surreal, anyways. I don't know if you spent much time here.
I've only been there 3, 4, 5 times. I don't feel like I have a real relationship with it.
I mean, I don't either. I don't gamble. This was just, all my family lives mostly in LA. So this was kind of a quick drive for them, a relatively quick drive for them. And, just something different. But we've spent some time out in the desert. So, none of us are really gambling or anything like that. The weird thing though, like Grace and I were talking about this, the weird thing about Vegas is there's so many weird contradictions. So you have these big opulent casinos that are, supposed to be, beautiful or, in these Romanesque architectural styles, but then they all just smell like cigarette smoke and they're just kind of gross inside. So you have this visual beauty or beauty, on some terms, but then it's kind of undercut by all the cigarette smoke and, I don't know, just the kind of funkiness. And then outside, the minute you step outside, you just smell the sewer because there's just probably so much shit flowing out of these places that it just stinks outside. So it's just weird. It's you look at it, it's one thing, but then you smell it and everything, and it's another.
Well, that's what's going on in Vegas. Very interesting to hear where you are. You remember who the guest is this week?
Shawn Setaro, right? Is that correct? Or are we?
Yeah. Are you familiar with Shawn's work?
I tried to familiarize myself to participate in the interview that I did not participate in. But I know he's a writer.
And you were missed.
I was missed. I know he's a, music critic, a writer. He's covered music for various media outlets, and he seemed interesting. And I guess you guys talked a lot about the Diddy trial. What did you guys talk about?
Yeah, well, let me you have a pretty good idea of who he is. I became aware of Shawn like maybe 11, 12 years ago when he was doing the Cypher podcast, and he really got into deep into a lot of records, interviews with hip hop artists. But since then, he's moved on to Complex Magazine, and he's kind of become this court reporter for pop culture. In addition to the Diddy stuff, we talked about the gambling case that he's covering. He's covering the NBA gambling scandal, and which now has baseball players in it, and I think a tennis player in it. The gambling thing is his big thing, but I think he came to a lot of people's attention and got his introduction into court reporting, covering Tekashi 6ix9ine, and he ended up writing a book about that guy and doing a podcast. So we talked a little bit about his transition into becoming that kind of court reporter, which isn't really, I think he went to Berkeley School of Music. He's a musician. And, I know some people. Do you know the name Jim DeRogatis?
No.
He was a critic in Chicago, still is a Chicago critic, but he's the guy who broke open the R. Kelly story. And he was very dogged in the court filings and getting into the weeds of the documents. And he was a critic. He was primarily that. So there's definitely a precedent for what Shawn's done. But when you do that, it's not like you're just talking about the crimes and all the untoward aspects of the Diddy case. We're able to put it in context of hip hop history, 90s hip hop. Because I tend to think of Diddy as a villain. And if you're an East Coast person, you grew up with Diddy as this institution in New York, and obviously there was racial things involved with it, but it was I think one of the smarter talks I've been involved with about Diddy, in part because, he's coming at it from both sides.
Yeah, that's interesting. In courtroom reporting too, you got to be very exact. Like there's an exactness and language with that whole situation that is different from general music writing, I imagine. So that's been a fun challenge for him, I guess, huh?
Yeah, he definitely seems to have leaned into it. I think when he talked about the 6ix9ine case and when he got started on it, he didn't know anything. He just went to literally every hearing, even the hearings that Diddy did. I'm sorry, the 6ix9ine himself didn't show up for. Every little thing, and that gave him the pieces to do sort of work beyond what was happening in the courtroom, and being able to identify the characters. We talked about the celebration that went on after Diddy was convicted of just the least charges, and I think having been around pop culture, been around hip hop in general, the reactions meant something different. I think, do you know the producer 88 Keys by any chance? I think he worked with Kanye a bunch back in the day, but he showed up to support Diddy one day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the average court reporter isn't going to pick up on 88 Keys being there, but Shawn did. And, it actually was connected to Diddy's kid, Justin. Justin comes off really badly in this documentary, by the way, if we're going to go back to Diddy stuff. But it was cool because, the main thing I should tell you about our conversation is we talked about all this court stuff, but we talked a lot about Christmas music, Yeah,
oh, right.
Because of the recurring episode they did with the great Bill Adler, who is a journalist. He's like 73 now, but he lives in Brooklyn, and he does this yearly Christmas list of a mix of songs that you haven't heard before. There's really, like you can tell, a concerted effort to find obscure quality Christmas music. And it's interesting, he did it because he's a Jew and he wasn't around Christmas very much. That kind of made him curious about this music that wasn't a part of his life. And he's managed to find like genres within that genre that are really good. There's a Blue Holiday by Charles Brown is the one that I kind of got obsessed with this go around. But in the introduction, I'll have links to as many of his shows and tapes as I can.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Are you a Christmas song guy at any level? Do you have a favorite? Digging in the crates?
I haven't dug in the crates so much of Christmas music. I know I kind of like, there's the classic like Vince Guaraldi, kind of like Snoopy Christmas, like the light jazzy stuff. There's I'm sure there's I think there's like a Billie Holiday collection of like Christmas music. There's like the James Brown Christmas album, which is kind of fun. I also like and a lot of people don't like Bob Dylan, but I like he put out a Christmas album like 10 years ago or something. That's kind of fun. And
I don't like, he's got a Santa song that someone laid on me last year, and because I did this mix of Bob Dylan songs. I am a Bob Dylan fan, but and I hate that Santa song so much. I hope it's not on this album.
I think it is. Yeah, like here comes Santa Claus. Here comes. I don't know if it's that one. But,
no, it wasn't that one. It's one I don't know. But anyway, Bob's a fun guy. I just watched The Last Waltz again this weekend.
You did? Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah, he shows up.
My airplane reading is Chronicles of Doom. Have you read that book?
No. What is that?
It's about MF Doom.
Really?
I can't remember the author's name. I want to say like C.S. Fernando or something. I think he's a longtime hip hop writer.
S.H. Fernando. Fernando.
Yeah, S.H. Fernando. Yeah. I think it came out maybe a year or two ago, but it's pretty good so far.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I think we got a little carried away talking about Vegas and our guest today. But let's go and have this conversation. I talked too much about Diddy. There's a lot of Christmas music talking here, so be sure to enjoy that. All right.
'Tis the season.
Peace. Have fun. Yeah, have fun, dude. Welcome to the West Coast Sojourn podcast. This is Donnell Alexander, and our guest today is the esteemed journalist, someone I've been a big fan of for a very long time, Shawn Setaro. Shawn, welcome.
Thank you, Donnell. I'm so glad to be here. And, we have a little bit of history. So I brought someone, I don't know if your listeners won't be able to see, but someone who wants to say hi, Larry Bird here wants to say hello to you. For listeners who don't know, Donnell and I spoke when he did his absolutely superb story about New Edition and why on earth they filmed a video in Los Angeles. Little behind the scenes take for you there. We spoke a little bit around that, and I connected him, I believe, with one of his main sources for that episode, Dart Adams. And so Larry came out of retirement to say hello and acknowledge that.
You low-key have Larry out all the time. He's right there by your side. It's unfortunate for Larry Bird, but he has become shorthand for white supremacy in certain spaces. Like there's bars in rural Oregon. There'll be sports bars, but they'll have no basketball on the wall. It's archetype. The one basketball player that's on the wall, who's it going to be? Only Larry Bird.
This is not his fault, but
no.
It is the fault of the 80s. Like, I certainly remember growing up, as a basketball fan, right, in that era. Because I was tall, people thought I could play basketball. They were wrong, but for a few years, I tried to live up to expectations. Yeah. And, I almost subconsciously, found myself rooting for the Celtics. And it wasn't until, and I grew up in New Jersey. So like, Nets, Knicks, these would be more obvious choices. It wasn't until much later when I gained any sort of political consciousness that I was like, well, gee, why did I feel a pull toward the Celtics, right? And this is a very deep sort of racial dynamic that Larry Bird didn't consciously play a part in, but, he was sort of an avatar for a lot of things that I don't hold him personally responsible for, but that's sort of how race in this country works, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think that these rural bars in Oregon are making up this thing of him as a, they don't care about basketball except for him, right?
Yeah.
That's very real. And again, not Larry Bird's fault, but that's sort of where we're at.
Yeah, it's the intersection of sports and race and all that. And it's never ending conversation in American sports, but it just happened that we recorded an episode with a former Times NBA beat writer, Mike Wise. And we were talking about there's a new crop of white American players that have been really gone for a long time, and how that's bound to be manipulated. There's certain players that are comparing to Larry Bird already, and they don't play anything like Larry Bird. They're just white. Yeah.
Right.
But I didn't think we were going down this road. I want to, as I explained to you, I should explain to anyone who happens to be listening and watching that we're going to be talking about the Diddy trial because you did cover that, and
I did. I was there every single day, May to July. So yeah.
Okay. But I want to talk to you about him, not just the trial, but him in the context of hip hop in general, because I came to you through the Cypher, and I know you as someone who's listened to a lot of different records, and the listening to records brings us to the other component of this podcast where we're going to talk about the Christmas series that you did with Bill Adler, the phenomenal Bill Adler. I was worried Bill was no longer with us, but
no, Bill is still around. I haven't talked to him in a little while, but I re-listened to some of the stuff in preparation for this interview. It reminds me, I do owe him a phone call, and it reminded me that I do need to get back in touch with him, but he is still around. And, doing the annual Christmas episodes with him was truly a pleasure. And beyond that, I'm happy to talk about this to whatever extent you or your listeners are curious. I love Bill and definitely think of him as a mentor and someone to sort of, I look to as someone to sort of guide my way through through writing about culture.
Yeah. I think I only talked to him a few times in the 90s, and he was already such a storied name that I just talked to him for the sake of talking to him. One of the great things about being in journalism, you have access to all these amazing people, and he's just a great guy to hear talk. And talking about this particular subgenre of music and the subgenres within that he sort of locates is a treat that I think everyone should share. I'll just tell you straight away, we're coming to it, promise. We'll get to the real Diddy stuff, but I was listening to it and I was thinking, well, this is a Christmas gift. It is such a gift that keeps on giving, yeah, anyway, it's for record nuts, really, at the end of the day. I know you from the Cypher. That was how I came into contact with your work. I think I was doing this conference on capitalism at Cornell, and I think I was doing this thing about mixtapes, and your stuff came to my attention then. It was pretty late in your run. I mean, not that late, but I had Nipsey Hussle. I had Nipsey Hussle on this thing. He contributed to this piece that I did at Cornell. I remember that. He was actually going to call in live to the conference from his airplane, and we had it hooked up, or so we thought. That would have been such a killer move. My question is, from the Cypher, I think of you as like a records person. How did you become a person who's covering the Diddy trial?
So it kind of happened by accident. What I mean by that is, circa 2018 or so, I was on staff at Complex, and SoundCloud rap was a thing. And how to cover that was an open question, because there were sort of two issues. Number one, a lot of the artists had perhaps objectionable things in their personal lives, 6ix9ine among them, right? And number two, they didn't need us. They could just go on Instagram and talk directly to their fans. So, how do you cover people, A, who aren't necessarily eager to talk to you, and B, you don't want to, every time you write about someone, start with a 3-paragraph caveat, because people have tuned out by the time you get to the end of it, right? So how do you do that? While I was trying to figure that out, specifically around 6ix9ine, I spent a few weeks digging into people around him. Who's this manager guy who's in all these videos with him? Oh, wow, he sure knows a lot of Bloods in Connecticut. What's that all about? Right? I'm gathering information, starting to reach out to people. And then he gets arrested.
Right.
And so my editor says, go to court. And I said, what court, where, how do I find out? What are we talking about? I've told the story a lot before, but like the first time I went to what I thought was going to be a hearing of his, I somehow got the right room. I got the right courthouse. I got the right judge. I got the right courtroom, and I got the wrong day. And I show up, and I will never forget. I'm sitting in there, and there's like people talking about like stealing from Whole Foods or something, or it's like a suit against Whole Foods for overcharging, something involving Whole Foods. And I was like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? Eventually I figured out I had the wrong thing,
Right.
and I started going to court, started covering Tekashi. That led to, covering him for Complex, doing a podcast, doing a book. And eventually I became the guy who knew what was going on in court. It was
hold
not
on one
something I
second.
had.
I want to make sure
Yeah.
people know Tekashi 6ix9ine. This is a specific artist who was. This was your big story, right?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
a notorious artist from that SoundCloud era, and
Yeah.
because not everyone knows, I just wanted to make sure that people knew that. And so,
Of course.
go on. I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah. So just, so by the time that had played out, I knew how to cover a trial, right? I knew what federal courts were, how they worked. I knew how to look up information, and I became kind of the guy who covered court stuff.
You just started.
And so,
you didn't have a
I
background in reporting.
I did not have a background in it. I'd had been on jury duty once, 100 years prior, but that was about it. And, I'd been arrested at a demo in my 20s, but that was, that was sort of,
Well, how did you scale up your reporting skills? I don't want to leave 6ix9ine behind, but you were sort of thrown in to a big, high profile story. Were you just relying on common sense? Did you have a mentor?
It was largely common sense, and I was lucky, in that I had the freedom to go to every single hearing for that thing. Even the hearings that were just to set a date for the next hearing, right? Even the ones where Danny 6ix9ine wasn't there, and it was the not even his manager. It was like the other gang member who maybe protected him, or, whatever, right? It was just going over and over again, seeing how that worked. And I do have to give a fair amount of credit to the judge there, Paul Engelmeyer. A lot of federal judges have this thing where they are aware that they have a big job, right? And they are aware that a lot of time friends and family members are there who don't understand what's going on. So they will take the time to explain, I'm doing this, here's what's happening, here's why we're taking this step.
Right.
And he, Engelmeyer was certainly one of those judges. So it was just a matter of sort of getting to go to a bunch of stuff, right? Actual court reporters, I found out later, only go to the high profile things. They're covering 80 cases at a time. Right. They pop up at the beginning and end. Right. They don't go to all the boring middle stuff.
You needed to be there. And the friends and family explanation kind of helped you too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it did. So it was just a matter of sort of throwing myself in the deep end and kind of learning how to swim. I had done some reporting in the sense of like music business stuff, right? Calling a bunch of people and trying to figure out, what's going on with this trend in music production, or, this sort of music business thing. So I wasn't starting from absolute zero. But in the legal sense, it was definitely, starting from the ground up.
Right. So the question though is how does that guy how did you get to be a guy who's covering the Diddy trial?
So for Complex, I covered a number of court cases, right? Sometimes entire trials, sometimes popping in and out. A number of legal stories and a number of podcasts, right? About artists that intersected with legal things. We did a whole podcast about Pop Smoke that did not center on his cases, but he did have a federal case that, he was still facing when he died.
Right.
That I was around for the arraignment for, that I covered. We did a whole podcast on YNW Melly, who, is obviously still facing what's that? Just so continuing to cover all these things, getting to, be known by, people at Complex and otherwise as like, at the intersection of, hip hop and the legal system, like, I can be one of the people who sort of knows both worlds.
Right.
And you see this because there are superb legal reporters, right? But they often don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the rap world, right? Or of like, gang stuff that sometimes is adjacent to the rap world, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can kind of miss those subtleties, or their audience isn't interested in that stuff. And you have music writers.
I'm sure there's elements of the courtroom reaction and such that you can see things or people that they're just not going to see.
Yeah. To give you one example from the Diddy trial, I was certainly the only person who noticed 88 Keys showed up for a couple days.
Oh, okay.
Right.
In support of.
Yes, in support of. I talked to him. He said, "Hey, I've been doing music with Christian, and that's why I'm here."
Yeah. Interesting. When we talked about the Diddy trial in our email back and forth before we got started, you sent me a link to a piece about domestic abuse. And can you tell people why that first and foremost was something you wanted me and loved to read?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote a piece for Complex about domestic abuse in the context of the Diddy trial, and specifically this concept of coercive control, which is sort of a relatively new term in as these things go. It was sort of codified around 2007, and it explains that like abuse is not, most domestic abuse, the majority, is not just you hit somebody, right? It is a pattern of behavior to control someone, right? It can be violence, but often violence doesn't happen very much. Violence sort of is the bottom underlaying thing, right? If other stuff doesn't go well, violence is always there, but it doesn't show its face all that often. It can be, financial control. It can be knowing where you are at all times, right? All of these sorts of things can be used to control someone's behavior. So that in totality is abuse. It's not just, the one time the physical abuse sort of pops its head up. And I think that's crucial to understanding Diddy, because Diddy had control over Cassie and over Jane Doe. I don't want to say Jane Doe's name. Your listeners can certainly find out who she is. He used financial coercion. He used all sorts of methods, controlling their behavior, who they could talk to, how much time even they could spend in the bathroom, right?
Right.
All of these things.
Well, here's the deal. I have this. Oh, go on, please go on.
I was just going to say that if the question is, well, why didn't she leave? Or, he's guilty of abuse, but that's not what he's charged with. Like, I think looking closely at coercive control gets you to answer a lot of these questions. The link between, because what he was charged with sex trafficking was coercion, right? Coercing these women into these freak offs. And so, coercive control kind of connects the dots between sporadic physical violence and actual coercion including coercing into, doing what he wants, including these freak-offs.
Why did you write it?
I wrote it because I watched this thing day after day, right? And it struck me that it seemed obvious to me that there was coercion involved. This was something, if you read the judge's remarks at sentencing, right? The judge sort of backs this up. He obviously couldn't change the verdict, right? He couldn't afterwards find, Diddy guilty of anything that the jury didn't find him guilty of. The judge did say there was coercion, and I think there was something to that, right? And so seeing this every day, I just couldn't square the circle between what the jury came up with and what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And the more coercive control had come up before the trial as a sort of something the prosecution wanted, a theory the prosecution wanted to talk about. They brought in a forensic psychologist to talk about some of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so I listened to her during the trial, made a lot of sense. After the trial, I went back, did a deep dive, read sort of the text, the actual book that, gave coercive control its name, talked to a bunch of experts. And it really, it just explained everything for me. It explained, normally I'm suspicious of totalizing theories with good reason, right? But this really made sense. This was like, oh, this is what Diddy did. He did A, B, C, D, right? It just sort of set up like, oh, his excuse was there was abuse, and then there was this other thing, right? The freak-offs.
Yeah.
But it really set up, okay, there was this totalizing thing, this totalizing sort of behavior that he did that really sort of controlled these women's lives. And so that it really made sense to me. And so that was why I wrote it.
Well, you're someone I can put this question to, and I don't mean ask this in a way that diminishes the suffering of people who are literal physical victims of Diddy, but I feel like he was this toxic person who raped hip hop repeatedly for decades. And there was a trauma. I really specifically remember being in New York, and it was flush with money when I was there, like 98 to 2001, whatever. And, there was always someone who was in fear of Puff, and he was ripping off artists and all this stuff. And I feel like sometimes I watched that, the new documentary on Netflix, the one that Curtis Jackson did, and thought, yeah, but, what might hip hop have been without him, really? You know what I mean? Is that too big a stretch for you, young man?
I mean, look, the CCNY game I was, in my early teens, right? I think I was 14 when it happened. So like, I wasn't in that world, right? This was something I read about in the newspaper or whatever.
Right.
So it's difficult for me to imagine, my first, it's just difficult for me to imagine a sort of world without his influence, which is kind of amazing to think about, right? I will say this trial really made me think about celebrity in it made me see the sort of a lot of things about celebrity that I don't know. I almost wish I didn't know.
Tell me what you mean. I mean, if you've had a revelation from this thing. I didn't invite you on to back off from this. What did you realize? I mean, I'm sure you saw some toxic stuff, and maybe
I mean, it's just that, seeing the people celebrating him there, right? Seeing the people who were there cheering him on, who threw a party after the verdict, it sort of got reduced to, oh, there was the one guy spraying baby oil, the one YouTuber. And sure, I was a couple feet away, you know, when that happened. Sure, that did happen. But, you know, that was more or less a comedy skit. That wasn't a celebration exactly.
Right.
But there was a sort of spontaneous party after the verdict in the, you know, right outside the courtroom.
Right.
And there were a lot of people there because it looked for a while like he might walk out that day between the verdict and sentencing. It was, there were a few hours where it was uncertain what was going to happen. And there were a lot of people there waiting to see him.
Yeah.
A lot of people cheering when his family came out and all that kind of stuff. And it just really was like, well, what exactly are you cheering for? Even if you think, you know, the verdict was fine.
Let me tell you something about my people. No,
right. I mean, look, look, I was aware of the resonance with the OJ trial, let's say. I would have to have been an idiot to have been there, literally been there and not seen it. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the right person to talk about that in any depth. Right.
Yeah.
But certainly it was there.
I'm just saying he's won a lot of BET awards. And, that's to me always the toxic thing about his whole story, the enablers and all those people who gave him all the awards. They knew his stuff. I'm maybe you are aware of it, maybe you aren't, but the Reddit page of everything that Diddy did that isn't in the documentary, some of it's BS, but I've heard a lot of that stuff. I mean, from credible sources over the years. It's like he's Trumpian in so many ways. I mean, in terms of he's done so much dirt that it's hard to quantify. You wonder how he got so much work done with all the dirt he was doing.
Well, this is one of the things about the trial, right? Is like, you know, certainly in the last decade, it seems like all he did was club drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, well, how did he run Revolt? How did he run Ciroc if he was just sort of constantly taking ecstasy?
Yeah.
You know, you know, and this is obviously seemed like club drugs started pretty late. You know, they started in his 40s or whatever, but, you know, so I can't speak to before that, but.
Well,
I think
it's
kind of stunning.
You do have to like have time off in between, or they don't really function as well. So, I mean, maybe he's a guy who did 3 days off, you know, 2 days on, or something like that. I'm just trying to be logical about it. You've watched, you know, the history of hip hop very well, and I just wonder, well, what did you think of Puffy before the documentary and then after? Did it change you in any way, your perspective on him?
The documentary did not. Just the documentary, largely, I felt like I knew, you know, most of what it said. But also, it was my job, again, to be up on the criminal case. It was my job to at least have a good idea what was going on with all these civil suits that followed in the wake of Cassie. I don't know all of the, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of them, but I've read a bunch of them.
Right.
And I have a pretty good idea of, you know, what they say in the aggregate, of the generally what they say, of what the outliers are. You know, there are many credible sounding ones to me. There are certainly some crazy ones, right? The tunnels under the houses and all that kind of stuff, right? There are some ones that, you know, to me don't necessarily pass the smell test, but there are lots of, you know, dozens and dozens of credible seeming ones that are being litigated. So I don't feel like it was the doc that changed my mind.
It was the trial.
It was the trial. It was just in general the stuff around Cassie, sort of as it came out. Yes, that was a big change. Prior to that, what did I think? I mean, you know, I wasn't particularly interested in him musically. I was a giant, am a giant big fan And I feel like, I was impressed with his acumen of turning someone who in another lifetime, and if you squint, could have been a, critically beloved but not very well known Brooklyn street rapper into, an icon. That took a lot. And I admired his work ethic, right? I'd heard stories from.
You don't have a favorite Bad Boy production?
No, I mean, look, other than, whatever the sort of Ready to Die era, like not particularly, I feel like I admired some stuff about him. I loved that he brought on my guy Pharaoh to write for him, right? And he did that one song where the recorded version actually sounds like Pharaoh, which is, I couldn't believe that was the final version of the song.
I don't know which song you're talking about.
Oh my goodness. I'll send it to you later. I forget the name of it. It has some futuristic thing in the title, but it was one that Pharaoh wrote for him, and the actual Diddy's recorded vocal is, I don't remember what Pharaoh said to me about it, so I don't remember, if he said it to me in an interview or privately, so I don't want to, tell tales out of school, but I think if you listen to it, he's credited on it. It's not a secret. You can tell very much that it was just kind of like he listened to the the demo and went right for it.
So what do you?
This must have been
think?
Mid or late aughts, I think. It was not.
Yeah, I would miss that. What do you think of yourself as these days? Are you just a music journalist? Are you a legal reporter? What do you call yourself in the resume that you don't send out?
This is a very good question. I wonder about it a lot. So there was a long time, there was a long period, in the Cypher and afterwards, where I very much thought of myself along the lines, something I stole from Bill Adler, was thinking of myself as a culture worker, right?
Yeah.
In recent years, there has been less of that, and there's been kind of more straight legal reporting.
Right.
But it has been in stuff that intersects with, music and culture and things that I am otherwise interested in.
Yeah.
So it's a good question. I'm sort of in a weird in between spot, and I think I don't know. It's interesting. I find myself kind of thriving there, and I think that hopefully I bring something a little different than people on either side of these things can bring.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What would I call myself? It depends on the day, I think.
Okay. Do you have a favorite Christmas hip hop song?
Oh man. Let the Jingle Bells Rock, Sweet Tea.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
It was better than the Hollis Queens one. The guys I went to high school with, they had a hit in 1982. A Christmas rap. I think that's what it was called, actually. So I've been around a regional hit. I'll find it on mixtapes for really super hipster cats sometimes back. Yeah, 'cause it's a rare one. But I asked that as a way of getting into your friend Bill Adler's list. Can you tell us about his list? Isn't strictly a hip hop list by any stretch, but can you tell people about it?
Sure. So Bill Adler, former, head of publicity at Def Jam in its sort of early years, mid 80s up through about 1990 or so, has since gone on to a distinguished career as, gallery owner and writer and, of all sorts of things. He has for many years made a Christmas mix. He he has gone out of his way every year to create a 55-ish minute mix of Christmas music that is not terrible.
Right.
And, spends most of the year looking for it. Long before I became aware of it, it became sort of a thing, right? Coverage in newspapers. And he initially sent it out to a small but elite mailing list. As I got to know Bill, I got added to the list, and I ended up having him on the cipher every year for a number of years to kind of break down his choices for the list, to sort of have an annual excuse to talk to him and, get his choices in the mix and the history of the songs. And there were a few years where I actually got the privilege of being the only place outside of his mailing list it was shared publicly. It was on the Cypher's SoundCloud page.
Wow. That's nice. Bill co-wrote with Curtis Blow Christmas Rap, right? Didn't he?
No, Bill, he did not, but he actually is the one who introduced me to Rocky Ford, who was one of the co-writers for it.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Bill was the late Rocky Ford, who was, and he and JB Moore, were music journalists who co-wrote, who wrote the song. And, as the story goes, as they'll tell it, Rocky had just started a family. He needed some money. And there was a writer at Billboard, Mickey Addy, who had written like some Christmas song and got royalties every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so they thought, oh, holiday songs, that's a good idea. Let me do a Christmas rap. And they knew Curtis. They had known Russell and had met Curtis, and he became the artist, and added his bit at the end.
Wow.
And that's how history goes.
All right. I just, because of my addled brain, I actually had conflated two events, and he wrote that anti-Reagan rap, didn't he? That's what he wrote. Bill.
Yes, I believe he did. Yes.
Oh my God, I'd forgotten that. I knew, I was aware of it in childhood. I think that's why I'm so impressed by him. He's a name from my very earliest entry, and probably like Diddy was for you. But these people there weren't that many recurring names in hip hop journalism, or people who were covering the records that I was getting interested in. So yeah, Bill Adler was a name. Do you have?
I mean, look, I will. Sorry to interrupt. I will say that one of the things that has been so great about knowing Bill is I remember, I was born in 1977, right? So I remember growing up in suburban New Jersey as a grammar schooler, right, in the mid 80s, coming across Run DMC, right, coming across the Beastie Boys, and thinking like, decades later, oh, the reason it hit me in suburban New Jersey was this guy. He didn't put the tape in my hand, but he's the one who constructed the press that made sure that eventually it made its way, to me. Like, it's kind of incredible.
Yeah. Now you play, right? What do you play?
So I played guitar and bass for many years, less so these days, but that was sort of my pre-music journalism career for many years, was as a musician. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how did hip hop hit you as someone who was actually playing music as a young person?
So
I mean, did you come directly?
Yeah, I mean, I never, other than a brief stint as a bassist in kind of a rap rock band as a young adult, like I never played it, right? It was something that I could love and enjoy without thinking about how are they doing that? Can I do that? Right? This sort of stuff that comes along with listening to other kinds of music for me. So it became very quickly, especially once I was actually in music school at Berkeley, it became a lot of my listening because it didn't have that pressure. Right?
What was coming out with you when you were in Berkeley?
What
What era?
Gosh, this would have been so I was there 95 to 98. So,
Huh?
you know, you
Huh.
can picture that there.
Such a good
But
DJ.
before yeah, so but before that, what I will say is like, you know, the getting to be a you know, middle schooler, right, in the age of Yo MTV Raps, in the age of Public Enemy, I mean, in the age of NWA, like that's so sort of for me was world defining, right? And set up my point of view, right? Like
Yeah.
coming across Public Enemy, like I, you know, really sort of set a course for me aesthetically, politically, whatever, artistically, that I can still see the influence of. And NWA, like I still remember vividly hearing them for the first time in maybe 7th grade and just not being able to make sense of it. I was like, I know this is a song because it has a part that repeats, so that's got to be the chorus.
Right.
But other than that, it came from Mars.
I was thinking immediately that you thought it was like the news, you know, because that did have those kinds of characteristics. But you said from Mars. It's just tell me more.
Just like I just didn't quite know how to make sense of it, right? Like even sort of like musically or whatever, like it didn't fit into other sort of buckets that I had as a, you know, 12-year-old of like what songs were.
Right. Very interesting. But it stayed with you politically, but musically it was always sort of aside from your music, actual music. I don't want to call it real musicianship, but traditional musicianship.
Yeah, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't something I studied and played and like, you know, made music like with other people or whatever. Yeah. Which is funny because it was initially the thing I did that I didn't have to analyze. But then of course, you know, years later I ended up with a job at Rap Genius where my job is of course you know, literally analyzing the stuff. So, you know, life is funny that way.
Yeah. So we strayed away from the mix. Do you have a favorite bunch of songs that stick with you from your years of? You did it for 5 years. I forget how many years.
It was a while. Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff that Bill put on those mixes, and you know, I almost hear them as a whole at this point, right? They'll put them on every holiday and just sort of like, oh, let's play the 2016 one and then the 2013 one and then the 2014 one, right? There are certainly individual things. The Prince Buster song, obviously, right? This is sort of the dirty one, the like Recca Poom Poom song to the tune of the Little Drummer Boy, right? Just an absolute sort of fun, dirty classic. There's a Yin Yang Twins one that I always really liked because it's sort of like from their later years. So it's, you know, it's them shouting, but it's them shouting about like, get the kids out of the yard and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So there's sporadic things that pop up, but overall, I think just the mixes as a whole are really, you know, what stick with me. Oh, and oh my gosh, I'm completely going to wreck the name, but there is there's one sort of very early duo who I first learned about through him, and oh, gosh, I'm not going to remember the name, and I will get back to you on that, but sort of very maybe 20s 30s sort of comic duo who had a great song on one of his mixes, and I got, you know, sort of deep into for a while.
Yeah. Now, you know, when I listen to all these, and I'm going to be playing this holiday season, the matter you're talking about, I'll include a link. Maybe you'll do the same if you're listening. But there, it does become this long thing. I fell in love with the song called Blue Holiday. I don't know if you remember that one. That's from 1947. I'm sorry, Blue. I think it's called Blue Holiday, but it's a Charlie Brown song from 47. And then there's a remix in 52, remake in 52. That's just a beautiful version of it. And I think about the volume of stuff he must hear, because I think of most Christmas music as being trash. How much stuff he has to go through to find these gems. You know, I'm assuming you use the internet for this, but it seems very much like an analog based enterprise. Like he might have done this on cassettes at the
Oh
beginning.
yeah, I mean, look, it's a mix with him, right? It's flea markets. It's, you hear this in my interviews with him. Going to record stores, calling record store owners in different states, saying, "Hey, what 45s do you have?" And also going through YouTube, right?
Right.
So it is definitely a mix with him to find material. Yeah, but he is an inveterate, flea market goer, record shopper. I've been record shopping with him for Christmas stuff. It's quite an experience.
Wow.
He's hands on.
Yeah, no, that's a short doc I'd like to see while he's still up
There
and
is
running.
actually a doc about not just him, but about Christmas music obsessives in general from a couple of years back, and I will send you the trailer.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's cool.
For
I
that,
just think,
he's featured in.
I'm not sure I want to hear everyone else's Christmas music. That's what I'm saying. You probably don't know this, but I was born a Jehovah's Witness. I don't have like all of the attachments to Christmas, any of the attachments to Christmas, to be perfectly honest with you. So
I
I
mean,
look at
neither
it.
does Bill, right? He grew up Jewish, so like,
There you go. And it gives you some objectivity on it. Where I mean, the vast majority of Christmas music does nothing for me. So when he finds these, it kind of, oh well, it's just such an obscure place to find joy for me, or to find meaning for me. And people will sing their hearts out about Christmas, and some of the songs are fucking clever. It's just delightful to me. I want to make our way out of here. But is there anything you're working on that you want to talk about? 6ix9ine doing anything crazy?
Well, he just got sentenced the other day. I wrote about it for Complex. He's going to spend the early part of 2026 in federal jail. He just
for what?
Sort of can't. So he sort of can't stop messing up. So he is on. He is on supervised release, which means, you have to behave, right? There's a bunch of stuff you can't do. Among the things you can't do is have coke and MDMA in your house, or beat someone up in a shopping mall. Both of those things he did. And so as a result of that, he'll be spending, 3 months of 2026 in jail.
When did you get sick of him? At what point did you get sick of him as a story, or is he like still giving something for you?
No, I think that once I turned in the book, right, that was sort of okay. I feel like I've said my piece. So there was, covering him in real time. There was simultaneously making the podcast about him. The podcast called Infamous that we did, Complex did with Spotify. Angie Martinez hosted that, which was a thrill working with her. And then, in the midst of all that, an agent called me, and I was petrified of the idea of doing a book, but I said, well, if someone else does it, I'm going to be very upset. But I kind of feel like that, right? Once he sort of got out of jail in 2020 for all of the stuff relating to the crimes relating to his rap stardom, right? He got out of jail right around the start of COVID, maybe April or May of 2020. I forget the exact date. I think it might have been in April. When that happened, I was supposed to have an interview with him. It ended up falling through. So the only time I've actually talked to him was a couple of phone calls trying to set up that interview. Didn't quite work out. Once that kind of happened, I said, okay, I will continue to cover him. I obviously did just last week. But once the book was done, once I'd actually written it, it was done and actually out in the world, I felt like, okay, well, I get the big story, right? The rise, the sort of 2017, 2018 rise. Like, I get it. I understand what happened. I feel like it captured a real moment in Trump's America, and hip hop, and that's that, right? Again, I'll continue to cover it, but I feel like once the book was done and out in the world, I feel like, well, okay, the bulk of what I would have had to say about it is there.
Okay. Point blank, no hesitation. How much do you expect to write his obit?
I hope not. Let's say that. I people have definitely asked me stuff like that before. I've seen him do a lot of stuff. I know he constantly meets with harassment when he goes out in public. And I'm sure that's terrible, right? It's got to be, Anytime you go out to dinner, all of a sudden the owner's coming up to you and saying, you can't eat here, get the fuck out. Or you're trying to buy some sneakers and they say, we don't have sneakers for rats, get out of here. These are real examples that he gave in court last week. I'm sure it's terrible. I'm sure it weighs on you, right?
Yeah. Well, I have a friend who uses the expression, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. And that's how it applies.
Right. Certainly using a street gang to launch yourself to stardom comes with risks. Try to mitigate these risks by telling on them sets up a whole other situation. I hope I don't. Let's put it that way. I hope that, the harassment he deals with continues at a low level and eventually drops off. I would not, for all of my complicated feelings about him, which are myriad, I certainly wish him the best and definitely do not wish ill.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Of course you don't. Listen, that wasn't a very Christmassy thing to end up on. You got anything else? Are you working on anything you can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we started this by talking about sports. I've been spending a lot of time in Brooklyn federal court lately covering all the sports gambling business, right? The Cleveland Guardians pitchers, the
Portland coach,
Terry Rozier gambling stuff, and then Chauncey Billups, the Portland coach, right? So there's three separate cases. There's the baseball one, there's the NBA betting one, right, where did Terry Rozier actually, when he left the game after 9 minutes, was that to help his friend win a bet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a case involving mob-run poker games where they would sometimes bring in people like Damon Jones to, be famous people and get folks into the games that they knew were fixed, right?
Right.
Of
course you're enjoying this story. Of course, this is right up your alley. This is who you are now.
So I've been knee deep in that, really trying to get my head around it because it's, again, three cases that are pretty, intertwined in ways we don't fully know yet, right? Like the NBA one, the indictment lists 9 separate unnamed people who were co-conspirators. Maybe they'll eventually get indicted, maybe they won't. But, 9 unnamed people, one of whom the description matches Chauncey Billups. It's probably him. We can't say for certain. He's indicted on the other case, but not for this one yet.
Okay.
So, we'll see. But it's a bunch of intertwining stuff.
But you do know some of the other
trying
names
to make sense of.
Right, don't you?
I mean, I'm not a sports guy, but I knew, I know them now, right? I know Jonte Porter and
I mean the unnamed people in this in that specific case. Are you able to deduce who some of them are aside from Chauncey?
Some of the other unnamed people. Not the co-conspirators just yet. Like some of the other unnamed people who are not accused of anything but are mixed up in it, right? Who are not accused of any wrongdoing, but their performance was involved and was bet on. Like, someone knew they were injured and tipped someone else off. Those are easy to pick out, right? Those are LeBron James or whoever, right?
Right.
That kind of stuff is definitely knowable. This is, again, LeBron James didn't do anything wrong. It's that his buddy allegedly saw he was injured and allegedly tipped someone off before it was public.
Right. No, I know
without LeBron. No one's saying LeBron knew about that.
No, not at all. But I know there have got to be some players who are shaking in their boots because I don't think there's like there's obviously a finite amount of participation, but I don't know that we know all the participation. Some people are worried.
Right.
Anyway,
no, we don't. And yeah, it worries me. I think that, sports gambling, it just goes so deep. I don't know. I feel like this is only sort of the tip of the iceberg with this stuff.
Did you have an opinion on sports gambling before you got into this?
I think it sucks. I mean, I'm not a sports person by any means, but I think that I have seen the little bit that I watch sports on television, just seeing the people talk about odds and the commercials being sponsored by gambling stuff. Like, of course, parlay bets are going to eventually affect play, right? Whether it's the mob or a player or, a player's cousin saying, hey, what's going on in the game today? And, they know their buddy doesn't feel well or whatever. Like it's
all happened so fast.
It's bound to seep out somehow. Yeah,
so fast and with no regulation. No, my old college, Fresno State, had their own point shaving scandal last year, and who knows what's going on at even the single A small college level. There's gambling on everything. If you go through the apps, which I'm sure you have, it's scary for our culture. Anyway, we're back into a bad place. I'm glad you're working on something cool because I imagine that's going to keep you busy for longer than your man's going to be in jail. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I know. I got to do something while Danny's taking the first quarter of 2026 off. So,
no, you're doing a whole different thing. You're doing the new the sports. What am I going to call you? A pop culture court reporter? Is that what you are?
I guess. Something like that. But look, this was great. Donnell, was so fantastic to talk to you. I'm really happy to be on, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Sure hope so. Take care, dude.